All right, everyone, ready for a wild ride. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Neuralink.
Yeah, Elon Musk's company. Yeah, the one promising to put brain chips in our heads. Sounds like science fiction, right?
Totally. But what are they actually working on? Is it all hype or is there real science behind it?
Well, at its core, Neuralink is developing a brain-computer interface.
Okay, so what does that even mean? Are we talking about plugging our brains into the matrix?
Not quite. Think of it as a direct link between your brain and a computer.
So less mind-blowing sci-fi and more about practical applications.
For now, yeah. Their immediate focus is on using this technology for medical breakthroughs.
Like what kind of medical conditions could this potentially help with?
Their primary goal is to help people with paralysis. They want to create tech that allows those individuals to control things with their thoughts.
Control things like what? Computers.
Exactly.
I'm not.
Imagine being able to type an email, browse the web, even control a wheelchair just with your mind.
That's incredible. It would be life-changing for so many people.
Absolutely. And it's not just about restoring basic functions. They're also looking at restoring things like sight.
Restoring sight. Seriously.
Yeah, they have this clinical study called blind sight, and they've actually gotten FDA breakthrough device designation for it.
Hold on. FDA breakthrough device designation? That's a big deal, right? What does that even mean?
Yeah, it means the FDA sees huge potential in their technology, thinks it could address serious unmet medical needs. In this case, helping people who have lost their vision.
Wow. Okay, now that is some serious sci-fi stuff becoming reality. But how does it actually work? What's the tech behind all of this?
So it all starts with this tiny device called the N1 implant.
Implant, like in your brain.
Yep, it's designed to be implanted in the skull, right beneath the skin.
Beneath the skin, so you wouldn't even know it was there.
Exactly. It's designed to be invisible. And don't worry, it's super small.
I could only imagine. But what's actually in this tiny implant? What does it do?
Well, it basically acts as a mini computer for your brain. It has a protective case, a battery that charges wirelessly, and the most important part of the chips and electronics that can understand and transmit your neural signals.
So it's like it's listening in on your brain waves and then translating them into something a computer can understand.
Pretty much. It records your brain's activity through these things called electrodes.
Electrodes, like the things they use to read your brain waves in those medical dramas.
Sort of, but way, way smaller. These electrodes are actually thinner than a human hair.
Thinner than hair. How many of those things are we talking about?
They're talking 1024 electrodes spread across 64 ultra-thin threads. And it's that density, all those electrodes, that lets them get incredibly detailed readings of your brain's activity.
So how do they even get those threads with those tiny electrodes into your brain in the first place? That sounds incredibly delicate.
You're telling me
Yeah.
it's actually way too delicate for a human to do. That's where the surgical robot comes in.
A surgical robot.
Yeah, they had to design a special robot to handle this, something with incredible precision.
I bet. So this robot is basically a brain surgeon.
You could say that it uses cameras, sensors, even this OCT system.
What's an OCT system?
Oh, sorry. It stands for Optical Coherence Tomography. Basically, it helps the robot see what it's doing, guides the needle to make sure those threads are placed perfectly.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm trying to picture this whole thing. So you have this tiny computer implanted under your skin, connected to your brain with threads thinner than hair, all put there by a robot. And this allows someone to do what? Like control a computer mouse with their mind?
Exactly. But there's another key piece to this whole puzzle,
Oh, what's that?
the Neuralink app.
There's an app for this too.
Of course. The app is what actually decodes the signals the implant picks up and turns them into commands the computer can understand.
So the implant is like listening to your brain and the app is translating what it hears.
You got it. It's basically learning your brain's language.
That's wild. And this is actually happening right now. This isn't just theoretical.
Oh no, this is very real and is just the beginning. They have so much more planned for this technology.
It's mind-blowing, going from helping people move again to potentially giving them back their sight. It's like something out of a movie. What else are they hoping to accomplish with this technology?
Well, they're also looking into tackling other neurological conditions too, things like restoring motor function, even helping people who have lost their voice to speak again.
That's amazing. The possibilities are pretty much endless. But let's be real, this is still pretty experimental, right? How long before we start seeing this kind of tech everywhere?
Yeah, you're right. It's still early days. There are some big hurdles they still need to overcome, both on the technical side and figuring out the practical side of things.
What kind of hurdles?
Well, for starters, the human brain is incredibly complex. I mean, we're talking about decoding the language of your thoughts here. It's not exactly a walk in the park.
Yeah, no kidding. I can barely understand my own brain sometimes.
Right. And then there's the whole implant thing. It needs to work perfectly for years and years inside someone's skull. That's a tall order.
For sure, you can't exactly just swap it out if something goes wrong. So, yeah, the technical stuff is a huge challenge. But what about those practical considerations you mentioned? I imagine implanting a device directly into someone's brain raises some ethical questions too, right?
Absolutely. We're talking about potentially life-altering technology. We need to be incredibly careful about how it's used and who has access to it.
Like, could this technology only be available to people who can afford it?
That's a big one. We have to make sure this doesn't just become something only the wealthy can benefit from. That would only widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Right, that makes sense. It's like any new technology. It has the potential to be amazing, but it could also make existing inequalities even worse. And then there's the whole privacy issue. I mean, we're talking about your brain here. That's like the most personal information there is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Protecting that data is crucial. We need safeguards to make sure nobody can access or manipulate your thoughts or memories.
Yeah, imagine if someone could hack into your brain. That's some Black Mirror level stuff right there.
No kidding. So, yeah, we need to be very, very careful. This technology is powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Totally. It's a bit overwhelming when you really think about it. We're talking about potentially changing what it means to be human, but it's important to talk about these things, right?
100%. We
Hmm.
can't just bury our heads in the sand. These conversations need to happen now while this technology is still being developed. We need to figure out the ethics alongside the science.
Absolutely. So, we've talked about the potential benefits, the challenges, the ethical dilemmas. What stands out to you most about Neuralink and this whole idea of brain-computer interfaces?
For me, it's just incredible what they're trying to do. I mean, connecting our brains to computers. That was pure science fiction just a few years ago.
I know. It's like we're watching the future unfold right in front of us. And whether Neuralink succeeds or not, this technology isn't going away.
Nope. This is the future, and it's going to change everything.
It's exciting and a little scary all at the same time. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's reel it back in for a second. Neuralink often talks about unlocking human potential. What do you think they mean by that, especially beyond the medical applications of this tech? Unlocking human potential, huh? It's a bold statement. What do they think they can unlock? Like, what's the big picture beyond helping people with medical conditions?
Well, they talk about enhancing our brains, like literally making us think faster, learn new things quicker, even having better memories.
Hold on, are we talking about like brain boosters here?
Kind of. Imagine downloading knowledge directly into your brain or being able to access any information instantly just by thinking about it.
Okay, now that's straight out of a sci-fi movie. Is that even really possible to go from like treating diseases to actually making people smarter?
It's definitely a possibility. If we can connect brains and computers directly, who knows what the limits are? We could be talking about a whole new level of intelligence, a fusion of human and artificial intelligence.
Whoa. That's both incredibly exciting and also a little bit, I don't know, scary. Like, imagine if everyone could just download information into their brains. Would we even need schools anymore? What would happen to jobs?
Right. These are the kind of questions we need to start thinking about now. This technology could change everything about how our society works.
Totally. Like, imagine if only rich people could afford to make themselves smarter. The gap between the rich and the poor would be even bigger than it already is.
Exactly. It's a huge ethical dilemma. We have to make sure this technology is available to everyone, not just a select few.
It's like opening a can of worms, right? So much potential, but also a lot of risks to think about. So, how do we even begin to deal with all of this?
By talking about it,
Yeah.
having open and honest discussions about the ethical implications, like we are right now. It can't just be scientists making these decisions. Everyone needs to be involved because this technology will affect all of us.
For sure. It's not just about the science, it's about figuring out what kind of future we want to live in. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Neuralink, what's the main thing you hope our listeners take away from this?
I think the most important thing to remember is that Neuralink is just one company. There are others out there working on this same technology, this brain-computer interface stuff. This is the future, and it's developing fast. We need to pay attention, stay informed, and be ready for a wild ride.
Well said. It's a future full of potential, both good and bad. It's up to all of us to steer it in the right direction. A big thank you to our expert for joining us today and breaking it all down. And to all of you listening, thank you for tuning in to this deep dive into the world of Neuralink. It's a lot to process, so let's keep the conversation going. Head over to our social media and let us know your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious.